Hey guys, Fifi Mangaka here. Today we're going to talk about a writing trope that is probably one of my least favorites. I want you to imagine this. You're deep in a story, you're racing through the pages as fast as you can, and you're on the edge of your seat because the story is just that good. The main characters have become your companions, and their struggles have formed a tight bond between you and the story. And just when you're about to unveil the secrets that have been teasing your curiosity and sucking you in, the unthinkable happens. It was all a dream. Yes, that dreaded plot twist that leaves you feeling like your investment in the story was an unfortunate waste of time, and leaving everything that happened before seeming like a lie. It Was a Dream is arguably the worst narrative trope in writing, in my opinion. In fact, I believe it's the most baffling, emotionally confusing, and downright frustrating trope you could ever use in storytelling. So if you've ever scratched your head after encountering this twist, buckle up because we're about to dive into what makes this seemingly harmless narrative device so criminal. At the heart of every story, there lies the daunting task of crafting a coherent and compelling plot. Writers are bound by so many things. We have the constraints of the plot progression, character development, maintaining a sense of whatever realism for the world that we've created. Enter the allure of "it was all a dream" trope. It's the ultimate shortcut, a sort of get-out-of-jail-free card that offers an escape from tangled plotlines or unsatisfying character arcs. The prospect of sweeping away any narrative complexity with a single revelation can arguably be enticing, especially when faced with the pressure of creative roadblocks. Characters may be painted into corners, subplots may sort of veer off course, and sometimes the narrative just simply loses its way. The dream twist offers storytellers the power to kind of reset that narrative compass and to correct perceived wrong turns, and to give the plot a fresh start. It seemingly allows writers to steer the story back onto a path of their choosing. But I hate to say it, the very reasons that make it appealing at first glance are the same reasons that upon closer inspection reveal its inherent weaknesses and pitfalls as a narrative trope. Stories are built upon the foundation of emotional investment. We willingly surrender ourselves to characters' plights, their hopes, their heartaches, and as audience members, we align our emotions with their experiences. Yet, the "it was all a dream" twist shatters this emotional contract. It leaves the audience left to wonder, what the hell just happened here? The journey that we shared, the growth of the characters that we witnessed, are all reduced to mere figments of the protagonist's imagination. This betrayal of emotional investment almost renders the experience entirely meaningless. Let's say we have a character that's morally questionable, like very morally questionable. They do a bunch of bad things. They steal, they kill, they lie, etc. Most audiences may wonder, when is this guy gonna get his just desserts? Like, when does he actually pay for the carnage that he's causing in this story? Likely because we typically would like to see some consequences or some tension for the actions that the characters take in a story, whether they're good or bad actions. A storyteller using the "it was all a dream" trope is gonna pull the rug from underneath your feet. Surprise, he wasn't that bad after all, he was only dreaming. So just forget about the other stuff that happened because it wasn't real. Does that make you annoyed? I know it makes me annoyed, and here's why that annoys me. Stakes and consequences provide the very tension that keep us eagerly watching and reading. Characters' decisions hold some kind of substantial weight, and the outcomes of their actions are what keep the narrative going. And as audience members, we anticipate those outcomes very deeply. I mean, you typically don't watch a movie or read a book that you have no care what happens in it, right? I mean, well, maybe you do, but that's more of like a bad movie night kind of deal, I think. One of the worst aspects of this trope is that actions no longer matter. Decisions lose any kind of significance and tension becomes completely obsolete. When everything can be waved away as a mere dream, why bother investing in the narrative at all? And when we've already given our time and invested in a story, the burn is even worse. We almost feel lied to, like we completely wasted our time. But there's another side to the trickery of this trope though. At times, it can actually be deceptively satisfying. There's no denying that on the face, the dream twist can offer a temporary sense of satisfaction, kind of like you solved a riddle or found the missing piece to a puzzle of some kind. The dream reveal is often the moment that elicits the most gasps and head nods, and we may initially see it as a writer masterfully crafting a plot twist, but that's just it. The dream twist feeds on the allure of the shock value. It almost lulls an audience into accepting any and all narrative and plot deficiencies. I feel that it's a short-lived satisfaction that quickly unravels as an audience starts to process what everything being a dream really means for the story as a whole. It's akin to being handed a beautifully wrapped present only to find that the box is completely empty. What appeared to be a gem turns out to be just a pebble, and that initial satisfaction transforms into disappointment. So I think I've pretty much established that I'm not a fan of this trope when used on the main plot of any story, but you may still want to use it, and I'm here to help you out with that, not to instill my royal decree on you. If wielded with a touch of finesse, it is possible that this trope can be a powerful tool that enriches your storyline rather than unraveling it. So how do you use this trope in a way that doesn't leave readers feeling like they've been swindled? Well, first, remember that suspense is your ally. If you're going to shake up your reader's reality with a dream twist, make them question the overall message and narrative of your story. Use the dream as a tool to introduce uncertainty and plant the seeds of doubt. But, and this is crucial, ensure that there's a purpose behind it. Instead of being a convenient escape hatch, let the dream reveal some hidden truths or buried desires, or even foreshadow future events. I particularly think it's good when you do that. Make the dream a mirror that reflects the subconscious thoughts of your characters. If you do this, I think you can more clearly and more convincingly create a connection between the dream and the events that take place in your story. Secondly, embrace the aftermath. If you're going to shatter the readers' and audience members' beliefs about what reality actually was in your story, allow the ripples of the dream's impact to still linger. The dream shouldn't just be an isolated event that the main character realizes and then moves on. You should let the effects of that dream bleed into the real world of your characters. Maybe they're haunted by visions, or they wrestle with their understanding of reality. Perhaps maybe even they struggle to differentiate between what's real and what's imagined. By delving into the psychological aftermath, you can add layers for your audience to consider, which gives this trope a little bit more usage than just tricking the audience members. And this ties into the last point. If you're using this trope, add space for different layers of interpretation. The dream twist becomes a storytelling gem when readers are actually given the reins to interpret its meaning. Don't just serve them the answer. Instead, provide subtle clues and symbolism that invite them to engage actively with your narrative. This will allow the audience members some deeper level of engagement. And you could basically transform them into detectives that dissect the layers of your story. And I personally think whenever your audience is analyzing what you've made, then you probably made something pretty interesting. By crafting a dream that resonates with the themes of your story, you can create a literary puzzle that's intellectually stimulating and emotionally rewarding to solve. And now I'm going to go on a little Fifi rant, and this is more applicable for people who are making visual novels, comics, or manga. So one thing that I've noticed in looking at a lot of works, independent works more specifically, is that a lot of people use the "it was all a dream" trope in the beginning of their story. They'll have some really intense fight scene or just some really shock value-y, jaw-dropping moment that happens, and then they'll pan to the main character waking up from their bed and basically erasing everything that you just saw previously. I've seen this several times in various comics, and I have to say, I think it's completely unnecessary to do this. Now, if it makes sense for your story, then please, by all means, ignore what I'm saying. This is purely my opinion. But I also find that a lot of writers, especially beginning writers, use this as a plot device to increase shock value. I think that it becomes really predictable when the reader can kind of see the direction that this dream is going into. We can almost anticipate that, okay, this is getting a little crazy. I fully expect that this person is going to be sleeping in a bed and wake up the next, 2 pages, 3 pages. So I really think that as authors of visual comics and manga, we should really especially stray from this trope. I just think it's predictable, it's kind of cheesy, and the reader or audience can always tell when it's about to occur. And the risk is just too great for dissatisfaction. And I really think that that's the biggest issue with this trope, is that the chance of your audience not liking that it was a dream is pretty high. And we don't want to disappoint them, And I think that staying away from tropes that have this level of risk is probably a good idea. Now, that's not to say that you can't take this trope and do something with it. I hope some of the tips that I gave could be helpful, ways that you can kind of turn this trope around and make it interesting and not, make it cheesy. But I have to be honest, I put this one in my bucket of probably don't use it. This one is one of the tropes that I at least tell myself that the odds of me using it are quite low. But there is a little caveat to that. So I think using It Was All a Dream for your overarching main plot, like your plot that leads to your big bad, I personally think it's not a good idea. But for subplots, like let's say you have certain arcs and different locations that your main characters go to, I think it's totally fine to use this trope in those instances. And the reason is because for mini arcs, things that are kind of complementary to the main story, I think using sort of, tropes that kind of have that clickbaity effect is something that keeps readers interested as they're reading. And also, it doesn't have the larger impact like using this trope on the overall story does. If It Was All a Dream only occurred to like one mini arc at the beginning or in the middle of your story, it's not gonna kind of sour the experience that the audience had for the entire journey. And so in that instance, I think it's probably safe to use, and I probably may use it in those spots too. So while I personally am not really a fan of this trope, I do believe you can still use it well and leave your audience with a super interesting story to think about long after they've read or watched. Though it can be frustrating and disappointing to basically tell your audience everything that they know about your story was fake, if you use the trope as a mechanic that can spark thought about the larger themes in your plot, it could be really interesting and rewarding. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this video, or I hope you just enjoyed my speed paint of Rue from my manga, Ye Olde Treehouse. I'll be making plenty more videos like this, so subscribe if you liked it, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!